We'll learn what to do when you need to start and end a new piece of yarn on your needle. So here I've been stitching along on my current row, and my yarn is now just a few inches long on the back. And when it gets to be about this short, it's time to stop. Don't try to work until you barely have any room left to move your needle, because then that just kind of makes your life more difficult. So when you've got just a few inches left, again, I'm working on the wrong side of my project. This is how you end off and fasten off a piece of yarn. You're just simply going to run your needle back under your work for about the length of your needle. Pull it through gently until it's pulled all the way, and then just snip the tail flush with the surface of the work. And this is the equivalent of tying a knot at the end of your work, and that is now secure, and you're ready to start a fresh piece of yarn. And here's how you do that. So I've threaded my needle again with another piece of the same color yarn because I still need to continue the row that I'm working on. And I've got my newly threaded needle, and I'm now going to run my needle underneath my stitches from the other direction so that I come out right at the point where I want to continue working. And so that would just simply look like running the needle back underneath. You're going to pull it through until the tail just hides underneath the last stitch. And let me just continue to work my way over. And the goal of this is to bring your yarn out right where you left off before so that you can just continue stitching and pretend like it's the same piece of yarn that you had previously. And when I make my very next stitch, I usually just try to be a little bit gentle so that I don't accidentally pull that yarn tail through. But after you've worked about 2 stitches, then you can feel safe and secure, and that yarn tail is neatly secured, and you're ready to just continue stitching. When you reach the end of any row, you fasten off your yarn the same way as you did when you ran out of yarn, and that's just by going back under your previous stitches for about the length of your needle, pulling it through, trimming it flush with the surface, and then we're ready to start working the next row. Now to join a new color and work the next row, we simply thread our needle with our new color of yarn, turn the work over to the back, and we can bring the needle underneath the stitches of our previous color worked. It doesn't matter that you're now going underneath some orange stitches with a green yarn. That will not show on the front, so you don't have to worry about that. We're just going to hide the yarn like that, bringing it out at the point where we want to start stitching. And by the way, remember in a previous video we learned how to hold the yarn tail down and stitch over it. That's only done when you're working in the very beginning, the very first stitches of your project. After that, when you've already got some existing stitches that you can work with, you don't ever need to do that thing where you stitch over your tail. You can just always hide your yarn under your neighboring stitches. And now I will just continue stitching with my new color. And the only other important thing I want to point out about kind of beginning on the second row or the second section of your Bargello project is that notice that I'm going into the same square as my neighboring stitches. So 2 stitches, when they're neighbors above or below each other, will always share a square. And the reason for that is that if you didn't have them share a square, you would see a little thread or bar of your canvas in between each stitch, and that's not what we want. We want to have the canvas fully filled in so it looks nice and lush and complete. So just make sure you always share a square with the stitch that is directly above or below the stitch you're working.